Many of our listeners compete with larger practices, be they big groups, franchises, or hospital based. My guest today can nod his head at many of those, yet he's staying private and thriving. I'm Carl White, principal at Mark Advisory Group, which is a healthcare marketing agency, and I'm also the host of Practice Care. And the mission for both is the same, and that's to help private practice owners stay private. Not only is that what they want, but I really believe that care is better when it's just you and your provider trying to figure out what's best for you. And nobody else is secretly whispering in the provider's ear what their agenda is, whether it's a hospital or a health system, franchisee, owners in faraway lands, whoever it might be. It's just better when it's you and your provider sitting at the table. And today, my guest is Todd Koos. Todd is the owner and operator of the PT Center with 4 locations throughout Charlotte, North Carolina. Todd is a 1990 graduate from the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and he also has a master's degree in theology and missions from Oral Roberts University in 2001. He worked in the outpatient ortho world for about 30 years, and then he opened his own practice in February of 2009. Today, it's grown to 4 locations and 22 employees. Todd's married 19 years and has 4 kids, and the mission of the PT Center overall is to provide a distinct and transforming level of physical care by incorporating faith as they serve the whole person when those opportunities arise. Todd, thanks for carving out some time to come on Practice Care.
Thank you, Carl. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and you've got a really cool background, I think, really cool. And there's some different parts to it. So let's just start there with your background and your bio. Fill in some of the gaps so that our listeners can get to know you a bit better.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a journey for sure. If you'd have told me 30 years ago, 35 years ago, that this is the niche that I'd be serving, even 15 years ago, I probably have gone, what? But it's been rewarding. It's been challenging, continues to be, but we'll talk more about that. But yeah, I had been serving as a PT down in Florida for about 7 years after I graduated from Mayo. And I'd also been doing some youth ministry work and really felt like there was more, like, man, there's just potential that I need to tap into. And some doors opened up, and I ended up in Oklahoma. Was hating the fact that I left the panhandle of Florida because I loved it there. But, beautiful 4 seasons, never too hot, never too cold, maybe a little too hot for some, but I like heat. So, but I took my little truck and my dog, and we headed to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I literally got my master's degree in divinity, and I worked my way through. I was one of those guys that turned a 3-year program into 4. But,
anybody can do that.
Yeah, exactly. So but I was able to go through school. I committed to not taking out any debt, and I went back to living off ramen noodles and chicken strips, and figured a way through. And through all of that, I really felt like I would be changing directions long term. That I met my wife there, and that's how we ended up in Charlotte. We felt we were supposed to come here and plant a church, and do the little healthcare. My wife's a nutritionist and personal trainer, and so we kind of got that niche going with healthcare, and that we would do, the free clinic thing and have an opportunity to serve the community pro bono while we planted the church. And we headed down that direction, and we got about 4 years into it, and life happened, and 3 kids under the age of 6.
Oh my God. I mean, they're lovely, I'm sure, but oh my God.
Yeah. And so literally I was managing an outpatient center for one of the private equity groups, had good solid relationships, that was stable. My wife was with our children, and then we were pastoring. At that time, it grew from 3 members when we started to about 40 or 50. So I was like 100 hours a week. Forgot my wife's name. At the end of the week, I was like, "Your name? What's your name again, sweetheart?" It just got to the point where I wasn't able to give what I felt I needed to, or what was required of me anywhere, whether from PT to ministry or first ministry at home. So spent a lot of time just working through that, and felt convicted that I was called to pastor people and serve people, I didn't need a pulpit to do that. So we stepped away from the church planting world and took a step of faith, like you had mentioned, in early
Right.
2009, right after the market dropped in 2008, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So it was a step of faith for me and my wife, who supported me the whole way. And we opened the practice so that we could try to be who we felt like we were supposed to be, and be true to our mission still.
Hmm.
And that, believe it or not, was 14 years ago. And as you said, since then, we've been able to grow to 4 clinics and stay true to our mission and reach people not only with great care, but as you said, when the opportunity arises, we try to minister to the whole person, whether it's sharing the gospel or just, for crying out loud, help them buy a chicken sandwich or whatever it is.
Hmm.
We have a homeless group that lives not too far from behind us. One day, I came here and he needed his neck cracked, you know? So, just it's been bizarre
Right.
how little things like that happen when we can serve our community. So,
Right. Let's do a pregnant pause. Your sound, Todd, is like a little, I don't know if there's like a chord that you're fiddling
oh, you
with
know
or.
what? I just put my hand over the side. I know exactly why.
Okay, good. All right.
How
So
far do you
we'll,
want me to back up?
no, we'll go with what we got because now that
Okay.
we've addressed it, we're good. All right. So pregnant pause again.
Yeah, that was a crazy day when the homeless dude came in and asked me to crack his neck. That was bizarre.
At least you know what he was asking for. That's, got the
Yeah,
context right.
exactly.
All right. Pause. All right. So we'll jump back in. All right. So Todd, thank you for that, for filling in that background. Very interesting. I didn't realize that the extent of the dual mission that you were referring to when we first got introduced to each other. So now, fast forward, you've been private practice for 14 years. Give us a bit of the evolution. So you opened in 29 on, the market
Yep.
crashes, you're taking a leap of faith, and here you are today with 4. Walk us through
Yeah.
the highlights of that.
Yeah. We got highs and lows for sure. Get able to get rolling. I took out a small debt when I first did it, and then I obviously leveraged the house and everything else I could leverage, trying not to take out a big debt. So my first goal was just work my brain out. I hired a front office staff and myself, and I literally for the first year just grinded. Uh,
Mm.
I did all the marketing, and at that time the social media wasn't as prevalent it is now. So every time I didn't have a patient, I was out in a gym, I was at a Y, I was at a doctor's office, I was somewhere talking to
Hmm.
somebody. And crazy subway, somebody comes walking limping in the subway, and I give them my card. I had a
Hmm.
patient. So just the fact that, man, you gotta get in the community, um, and you gotta be bold. You gotta, if there's a rock, you gotta turn it over. And I was able to do that. And then about a year into it, I was cranking, 70 patients a week.
Wow.
Yeah, I was cranking it 50 hours a week of care, and my thumbs were about ready to fall off.
Yeah.
Um, but I knew that my first goal was to get rid of that debt. And so I just committed until I got rid of it. I
Hmm.
wasn't hiring anybody. And then I had enough of profit margin that I could hire a staff therapist, and brought them on. And soon after that, we brought a tech on, and was able to keep things between the guardrails. At that time, everything was an hour-long treatment. I double book people. If I had ACLs that were pretty high level, I would go 3 at a time because I could navigate that, but try not to go more than 2. And that's the thing. We're still doing that, and that's not many clinics still do that. We still use techs, and we try to keep hour-long visits.
Okay.
And we go 2 an hour. We still do one-on-one sessions on occasion. So that's a jump ahead with evolution. But so that first year, I hired somebody, and by the third year, found an area about 20 minutes from where we are, and we're in the county south of the main part of Charlotte. and there was an area of growing bedroom community, fairly affluent, that really only had one hospital system in town. So I took the chance after I did my due diligence that that was the right place to go, and opened a small 1,200 square foot space and lead therapist. And we adventured into the second clinic. And that was in 2012.
Okay.
So just over 3 years.
Wow.
And that actually took off. So
Yeah, it sounds like I mean, location, 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 right? It sounds like from what you're saying, you picked a nice one.
yeah, we were very fortunate. We got the right place. Now we have competition over there, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have two private equity groups and another hospital that's out there. So and a couple private folks that do cash. So it's now we're all in competitively there, and that
Mm-hmm.
community still is growing like crazy. Um, so then and in 2017, I made a big mistake. I got pretty excited about where we were, what our profit margins were. I was actually uh, so I decided to partner with someone. I went back and got my fellowship in 2015. So I have my FAA, OMPT, all those big letters and all that. And my mentor was just a terrific mentor, and he lived up near downtown Charlotte. So we decided that we wanted to try to partner and get a clinic there. Unfortunately, that didn't work out well. We still have that clinic, but I think I tried to grow that one, and then we acquired another one, and then a buddy of mine wanted to downsize, so he basically gave me another one. Um, I
Wow.
just bought the equipment for literally like $500. He was like, "I just need out."
Wow.
So all of a sudden, I went from two and doing really well to trying to do five
Okay.
in a matter of 6 months.
Wow.
Excuse
And now
me.
you're at four, so we know part of the story.
Yeah, one of them became a vestigial organ and just quit working. Um, but we were fortunate enough that was a clinic that basically was given to me. It was just a little bit out of our area. And I was trying to be Superman, going back and forth. And before it became a real liability, I was able to step out of that one.
Okay.
But I learned a lot. I really
Yeah.
did. I learned about systems and structures and people and
Mm-hmm.
personal limitations and financial limit. I mean, it was yucky. Um, Selfish ambition can get in the way, and it did for me.
Yeah.
It did for me, and so I
I
learned
guess,
a lot.
yeah, I guess it's good you learned that lesson without bringing the whole ship down, that you could carve off that bad organ and keep going.
Yes, yes,
Nice.
absolutely.
Nice. So let's get to the big question, which is you said it. You've got franchises, you've got private equity, you've got hospitals and health systems surrounding you and competing for the same patients that you want to get. And yet you're staying private and thriving at it. I'd like to get into like some of the advice that you have. And I've got written down here, from a competitive perspective, people and staff, et cetera, et cetera. But rather than going one by one, just what comes to mind for you? How you doing it?
I think I've been very, very fortunate that I've found people that want to be part of our mission and stay true to that. There's a thing. It's we call it the BAM, and it's business as a ministry, and those can get clouded in a hurry when you're
Mhm.
trying to serve people and you get people all excited about the mission of the company. And I often tell them, I'm like, guys, we're not singing kumbaya. We're doing therapy,
Mhm.
and we got to be great, and we actually need to be greater at what we do than anybody else because we're a niche. We're fighting the private equity, and we got to be great with our hands. We got to be great with our diagnostic skills, and we got to be great with our treatments in general because then people will care about anything else,
Mhm.
and it'll open doors to other things.
Mhm.
If you're not great at what you do, not only are we going to get gobbled up, but people don't care.
Mhm.
So get rid of somebody's pain before you take care of anything else.
Got it.
So that's for us, that, that balance. Business is first. You got to take care of business.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how, for us, being able to stay, as I noted, on the hour-long schedules
Mm-hmm.
with our techs, being able to see two. Very seldom do we do more than that. Again, if it's a high-level shoulder and an ACL, or a guy that's returned to sport with a muscle strain or something, you can do three. But our goal of giving that quality care, making sure somebody, you or a tech, is right there coaching people the majority of your treatment session.
Mm-hmm.
For us, because that does not happen at some of the other places. And we hear that all the time. It's like,
What
wow,
what happens at the other places?
well, I think they stand behind their computer and they point and go do
Ah.
that, do that, and do that, and come find me when you're done.
Mm.
We hear that a lot, and that's just not what we want to be. Um, I think the difficult part is that I'm battling now is a lot of the private equities are getting the in-house uh, residencies and those fellowships. So we're working hard to be competitive with our mentoring, especially with the millennials and all the new generationers that are coming out.
Mm.
That's a big challenge for me, and that's where I'm moving more towards, is bouncing between the clinics, making sure that our newer graduates who long to be mentored are getting that quality mentoring.
Okay.
And that's where we're fighting. I feel like that's where I'm fighting the biggest battles, is to make sure that our young therapists know they are being mentored, and it's not just, hey, I'm coming to see patients and generate revenue for the company. It's,
Right.
hey, I don't mind doing that, but what am I able to receive at the same time?
What's in it for me? Yeah. Which is not an unreasonable thing to ask for somebody who's trying to
Absolutely
develop a
not.
career. Yeah.
Absolutely not. So that's trying to make sure that our culture stays consistent, and our vision stays consistent,
Mm-hmm.
and our ability to meet the needs of a new generation of therapists uh, is also consistent.
Right. And so when you say mission, you mean it's the, PT first, but the whole person later,
Yes.
I guess, right? How public are you with that?
Well, you saw it on our website,
Mm-hmm.
so it's public. I laugh because I always used to say, I'm never going to put a fish on my website. Never. I hate that. Yeah. Yuck. Those are the believers that can't be trusted. Da, da, da. I still kind of feel that way, but again, I feel like I'm supposed to let people know who we are,
Mm-hmm.
but also we're not trying to. That's not first, right? That's
Right.
something I believe comes through relationship. It comes through taking care of the felt needs first.
Mm-hmm.
And then, also other things just open up. And
Yeah.
we never try to bring that to the table first. I do offer, for me, I committed to offer to pray for people when they come in for an eval. And I've had people just say, no, you can keep that to yourself. And I'm like, okay, then let's
Mm-hmm.
go fix your neck.
Yeah.
I've had people jump off the table crying and giving me hugs. A doctor's never prayed for me ever.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So, I mean, I've run into a little bit of everything, and it just is what it is. But that's not something I require of our staff. If they feel like it's something they want to do, they can. If not, then it's okay.
Right.
Get people better.
Right. And you hit on something really important. If I take what you're saying and generalize a bit, you have carved out a difference, and that's so important. If you think about, when a patient is checking you out, should I go to the PT center or should I go to whoever down the street? They've got choices, and what they want to see is what's different about this place. And a lot of providers out there think that it's our service, it's my experience. Those are important, but they're not differentiators. Even if they are, even if you, their provider X, has a lot more experience in what you do than the person down the street, the patient who's checking you out for the first time just doesn't spend a lot of time going to that depth to try to figure things out. Um, but you have carved out a difference that is easy to spot and that people, this is what strikes me, and that people can make a decision on, well, I'm going to get good care there. And if any of this is interesting to me, I have the opportunity to participate in that added level of mission as well.
Yeah.
We had another guest on a few episodes ago who said, look, we want more of this. This is what makes us different. And the way that what they do is they say, that's what we talk about. We still get a lot of other types of patients that walk in the door, but not as many as we used to. We get more what we're looking for of what we think we're really good at, because that's what we talk about all the time. And so it doesn't have to be unique to the world. It's just got to be different from those around you. And that's what you're carving out. So I think, it sounds like one way in which you're staying private is you've got a difference out there that people understand, and that's getting out, and people can, I want that. So I'm going to go, only Todd's place gives that to me.
Yeah.
And that's what I want.
Yep. And it's for us, it's about culture, right? If you want to take the byword of that, that's one thing the other thing I'm really working hard on is culture. The whole, hey guys, we got to be great at what we do. That can set us apart. We got to use our hands well. I've got my fellowship in dry needling and spinal manipulation. You know what? And that's the other thing we're trying to carve out. Is like, are we what's our avatar? And we need to be even more niched in our avatar, because I'm looking around compared to where we were when I came right out of fellowship. Everybody dry needled, right? We were needling the world and cracking the world. And now we've got a couple of people who specialize in women's health, and they're not interested in cracking. So it's like different offices, different avatars. How do we market those things to stay relevant?
Yeah.
But be consistent with our culture. So those are always difficult things.
Yeah.
And we're navigating those. But I do think culture, making sure that all my directors, all my leaders we're speaking the same language. We're communicating well on multiple levels. We're setting expectations. I think that's the thing when you get turnover and transition, which is inevitable. That we need to do a better job at, especially when it comes from our culture, right? Because even now we're going through some things like, hey, you can't, I want you to minister to people, but you still, there's a number of the reality of CPT codes. You need to bill well, right? You need to.
There's no CPT for ministering, so pick the right codes.
Yeah, you gotta pick the right codes and make sure you're billing well.
Yeah.
And you got to get to X number of visits each week. So it's not like we don't have those conversations. We do, and they're unfortunately sometimes often.
Yeah.
But to do them within the context of our culture and what we're trying to accomplish on both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, so there's the second thing. So a clear difference, a clear core difference, and then a culture. They sound difficult, and not to make it sound like, they're really easy. They can be challenging to figure out and then implement. The nice thing is that most don't. And so if you can pull those off and keep them over time, your practice will have an advantage, a competitive advantage, because those things show in how the practice runs in things like efficiency and customer service, things that patients do see. But they just, it takes the leadership or the owner. If it's you, it sounds like you have a couple of layers of leaders. If it's other practices maybe don't, or they do, but it's just got to be consistently done and monitored to make sure that it's, because there's such difference makers. And you're not the first guest to come on here and say, look, the reason we're surviving and the reason we're doing so well, we have a really well-defined culture. You can have a culture and it could be vague. That's the other thing. A lot of people have vague cultures. It's got to be specific. It's not anally specific, but it's got to be to the point where if you said it to somebody who didn't know anything about it, they go, yeah, I think I understand what you mean. Not like, I don't know, I understand what you mean,
Yep. Yeah. And the culture of having our values, in fact, just felt like not too long ago, our values are excellence, enthusiasm, education, right? And we felt like excellence were just, people weren't getting to work on time, where our accounts receivable was climbing, and we're like, what in the world's going on? So shoring up those things, it's gonna happen. We just had somebody resign yesterday because like all you do is look over my shoulder and well, you're making mistakes. And
Yeah.
we are, one of our values is excellence. We're not trying to hammer you. We just want to be excellent at all we do. And
Yeah.
sometimes it goes forward, sometimes it doesn't. I hate it because then again, it's transition, but we have to stay true to who we are.
Yeah.
And try to be excellent, because accounts receivable can't keep climbing.
No. And I'm curious. So finding people today is a lot harder than it's been. That's no surprise. So I'm wondering if you were contemplating, all right, this guy's got to go, but man, it's going to be hard to fit. Did you maybe hold on to that person a bit longer, or did you say, well, no, got to do it, culture first, and we'll just deal with it?
Again, committed to our values, graciously holding people accountable. We're not being, I wasn't doing it. It was our billing collections team.
Mm-hmm.
And we just made the commitment. Said, guys, we have to hold our front office staff accountable. You can't have mistakes with Optum, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't get the verification after how many visits, and we just had to write 3 visits off because you didn't do your job. It has to get better. And just knowing that it wasn't changing. So we knew conversation was coming, but fortunately the other person was able to leave, quote unquote, on their own terms,
Right.
which is always nicer, even though it leaves a gap and you got to fill that void. So I'm okay with transition there if a person's not willing to go where we are committed to going as a company.
Right.
It's never fun to see somebody leave, especially when they've been with you for a while.
Yeah.
And that's been hard as a leader, accepting the fact that not everybody's going to stay forever.
Yeah. Yeah. And, so you look at that person, you say, well, we have to do this and swallow it because if we don't, then everybody else around us is going to see that we're compromising the culture in this moment. And that's going to be even worse than if we deal with whatever we have to, because that spot's now vacated until we can backfill it. Yeah. It seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah. And then, for us, it's an opportunity, as we talked about with our culture, making sure we're setting expectation.
Mm-hmm.
When we find the right fit, we set expectation, and then we can go forward on a totally different level.
Right. So it sounds like for you, I mean, we've talked for a bit here. We certainly haven't talked for a very long time, but 2 of the key levers, I guess, to staying private and thriving is having that core difference. What's different in a sea of physical therapy practices out there that, many of whom know what they're doing. People who choose us do it because this is what's different about us. And then the second part, so that's sort of the external, and then internally, a really good culture that kind of guides how the PT center runs every day, what it will and won't do, what's expected of it. And like I said before, you're not the first one to come on here and talk about the importance of culture. You're sort of adding fuel to the fire of it can be a real difference maker. Excellent.
We know the why.
Yeah.
But you got to have the how.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the business part of it.
Right.
Yeah, we want to serve people, but if the doors aren't open, we can't do that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, and Todd, we could, go on peel this onion a lot more off, or just, for a lot more time. But in the interest of kind of, bringing us home, a couple of questions I ask every guest. The first is, now that you've heard our conversation, is there anything you think I should have asked you that our listeners need to know about, but just didn't ask you?
I don't think so, Carl. I think it's been a kind of a top to bottom, left to right.
Good.
I think that's, like I said, we could probably peel layers of the onions and we'd find something, but
Sure.
I don't think so.
Okay. Excellent. And then the second question is, if we take a step back from what we've been talking about, for those who are listening, who are, facing what you've been facing, I'm private, but it just feels like it's getting a little harder, I'm struggling. Are there 1 or 2 tangible steps you would recommend that they take as soon as they're done listening to this to get down the path of turning that struggle into thrive? I mean, for me, one of them sounds like keep hunting for that core difference. I'll make it up. You are an OBGYN. I deliver babies. What's different about me? It's got to be something that's different about you. And I don't mean like you got to go, you just have to make something up. There probably already is, but it
Yeah.
takes a while to dig for it. It's got to
You
be
know,
meaningful to who you're trying to serve, but I'll bet you that there usually is.
I tell you what, we're working really hard right now on our culture. I'm meeting with my team. We're going through a book on culture, growing culture. Every week I meet with my leaders. We do a Zoom call and we get to the nitty-gritty of our own personal culture. And about 3 weeks ago, I heard a leadership message, and number one was you got to get butt ugly with your own leadership skill and style. And
Which means,
which means you got to get butt ugly.
but what does
And
that mean?
you got to look in the mirror and you got to be honest. What is my culture? Am I really doing everything I can do to build culture the way I feel like I'm supposed to? Is there anything, any relationship with my leaders that it's not good and it's
Mm-hmm.
my fault and it's my fault?
Mm-hmm.
What are my collections and billing? Are we really doing the little things well? And got to start with you. You got to make changes in you before you can expect changes in others.
Mm-hmm.
So that for me would be if you're leading a clinic, take an ugly but needed look at yourself
Yeah.
and
Be
see what
honest
you
with
can do.
yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just be honest with yourself and say, hey, where do I need to shore up the fringes here?
Yeah.
And do I have relationships that, man, probably not as good? Do I need to go and apologize to somebody? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I haven't been paying attention. I'm just not doing my job to help you. Where can I help you? Um,
Right.
and then if you haven't, and you want to step out and do this, one, you got to decide, are you going to be insurance or are you going to be cash? And then you got to commit to it. You got to jump and burn the boats.
Right.
Don't go back to where you came from and just go for it. Because if you don't go for it, you'll never know.
Okay. Interesting. Well, good. Thank you. And thank you so much for that. And once again, thanks for carving out some time to come on Practice Care. Um, just a couple of points before we go. We're going to put Todd's contact info in the show notes. So if anybody's interest is picked and would like to reach out and see if you can grab a few minutes with him, we'll give you info on how to do that. And then a couple of points before we finish. First, if you've had an experience with the business side of your practice like Todd has, or you've got another experience, or you're someone like me that serves private practices and you've got some expertise that you'd like to share, we want you to come on Practice Care. In the show notes for this episode and every episode, there's instructions, there's a little form to fill out. Just want you to tell us what's on your mind. Please do so right away so we can get you scheduled. And then finally, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Practice Care on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks again, and until next time.